each time we work, you're going to have to get your paints out. So we've got a titanium white, we've got a ultramarine blue, we've got a sienna brown, we've got a raw umber, we've got a color that's like cadmium red, it's a Grombacher red, and then a kind of cadmium yellow. And for the first painting, all we needed was the burnt umber or the raw umber and the blue. These two together mix a black. They mix a richer black than if you just got black straight out of the tube. And then this is what made everything lighter. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, if you can imagine, there's going to be a third sort of pot of color. We're going to have white, we're going to have black, then we're also going to have a blue that's just all by itself. So I use this palette paper over here. This is a little bit different than what you guys will be buying. This is actually freezer paper. It comes in long rolls, and I use it at home because I have big areas of paint that I want to work with. But because we have a small surface, I've got a smaller palette for you all. And we'll always use canvas paper. Your paper is going to be slightly smaller. And when you start out, what I'd like for you to do is just sort of figure out what your composition is going to be. And there's like a cheat way of doing this with a piece of paper, just cutting out a little rectangle and being able to look so you can block everything else out. And there'll be an element of that that's in the video. I'll show you another example of it. You don't have to paint to the edges. What I would probably say is maybe like a 9 by 9, 9 by 11 area. This is a big enough area to work. In the first painting that I showed the morning class, there's just one box in it. I've got two boxes in this one, and it actually is a little bit more interesting to paint when you have more surfaces. So I went ahead to put two of these together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the sort of corner cabinet that's in here. I want to make sure that my perspective is about right. And from the morning class, I was warning them about not squaring it up too much. So you wouldn't actually see it like this. This wouldn't be the angle of the corner cabinet, even though you know these walls come to a 90. That would be the view if you're looking straight down at it. And also, if you lower your eyes enough so that you're in line with the cabinet, this would be a straight line across. So you want to make sure you have just a little bit of a pitch in here to suggest it's going back into space. So that's about where I want this to be. You will all have different angles, and so yours will be slightly different from this one, but this is the gist of it. And then I want to try to get the blue box. There's a light blue box up there. And I've arranged these so that they are parallel to the walls. So this angle here and this angle here are about the same. And then when I do this front edge of the blue box, this angle here and this angle here will be about the same. So you can kind of see how those relate. There's some space between this corner and the wall, so I want to make sure that I don't draw this all the way up to that edge. And so here's the blue box. If these boxes' proportions are off, that's not a big deal. I'm mostly looking for the values and the colors to be right. And then I've got this smaller box that sits on the top. And because I set it on there, I know how far back it goes because I was playing with the shadows. But you guys might want to take a close look at the still life before you actually start painting each time, because sometimes from a distance it looks like it's doing one thing and it might be doing something else. So here's three sides of this. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you see one of these boxes, you don't see it on a flat position like this. You're perpendicular to the front plane, because then all you have are, there's one plane and four edges. And then also, if you see a little bit of the top, that's better. So you've got a front plane and a top plane, but it's still not as good as being able to see all three. So now I can see side plane, and top plane. The more information you give, the better, okay? So that just helps. So you may have to move your chair slightly. You can move your tables wherever you want. Just move them back when you're finished. But if that helps you get a better view. So this is all we need to do for here. I might make a note of where some of the value changes are. There's a sort of spotlight effect that's happening on the ground. There's a cast shadow, which is that kind of dance element. You know, don't let your boxes be up there without any cast shadow. There's also a cast shadow coming from this box across there. And none of them really hit the wall yet, so we don't have a real raking light. In a future painting assignment, you might see that there's like a cast shadow that's over here on the side. And we have some value breakup between, you know, lights and shadows that are here. It gets just a little bit darker right in here. It's not a true cast shadow, but there is like a darker shadow that's happening in here. And then this value over here is just maybe a little bit lighter where the light's coming down. Okay? So I'm going to paint from the, I'll probably paint from the neutrals first. So I know this is a gray. There's not really any strong blue in this. This is also a darker gray. And then this is like a pure blue, straight out of the tube blue. This is a light blue, and this is an even lighter blue. So I'm going to have to sort of do two different things in here. So when you mix up your black, one of the first things you want to do is make sure it's a neutral black. So I've got a large area of my umber. I'm going to have an area of my blue here. And this is probably like 15, 20, 25 cents worth of paint that I'm putting out here. So each one of these paintings, you know, you might try to skimp on your paint. Don't worry about skimping on your paint too much. But also don't pour out so much that you end up wasting it. Acrylic paint will dry fairly quickly. Okay, so you've got to have a palette knife. This is probably the greatest strength of the painting, is to mix the colors accurately. If you get something a little wonky here, that's not such a big deal, but if the color is off, that's probably the biggest error in a painting. Also, when you are working, you want to make sure you clean off everything before you go into another color area so they all stay sort of pure. So I'm going to get a little bit of this umber, bring it down here, wipe that off, get a little bit of blue. And what I found is that the blue and the umber are about even in their intensity, but some things that you might find is like a red might be much stronger than a blue. So you only have to use a little bit of red in a blue to make a violet. So you just kind of have to play around with it a little bit. Every manufacturer is different. Sometimes pigments versus hues are different. A true pigment is something that's coming out of the earth maybe. A hue is a manufactured sort of synthetic color. So we squish it together. Try not to spread it too far out on your palette, but just maintain it in a small area. And it's so dark, and this is the same thing with violet. When you mix a violet, it's like so dark, you can't really tell what you have. You might say that's black, maybe it's not. But what you want to do is you want to add a little bit of white to it to see it as a tint, to see it as a lighter gray. And because you'll be using this to add white to, and if it turns out to be too brown or too blue, you'll want to adjust it. So a little bit of white, add that in here. And what you want to do is you ask yourself, is that a blue gray, a brown gray, or is that a neutral gray?
Neutral gray.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I got lucky. The morning class, I had to do it a couple times, and so practice makes perfect, right? Okay, so I really don't have a black up there. So almost everything that I'm going to be mixing is going to be lighter than that, so I'll be adding white to almost everything. This is really close to this light area right in here, and so I will probably darken it when I get to this area right up in here. So I'm just going to methodically work my way around and fill this painting in. With the water, I've got a round and a flat here. In the morning class, I only use the, a bright. I only use the bright. I probably will do that again. I get it wet just so the paint moves a little bit better. It's not quite so stiff in the brush. But you don't use so much paint that becomes like watercolor. So I'm going to mix up a, I'm going to go dark to light. I'm going to go from here to here to here to here to here, getting lighter and just getting all that sort of neutral going. So I'm going to mix this in with the gray that I had for the darkest gray. So artists typically use canvas or canvas paper because it has a surface to it that pulls the paint off of the brush, and also instead